To see how you can add and delete cells, let's go up to the Office button again and open up our Eat Cake Sales Forecast. We see here that we already have a table of information available to us. But let's say that we now have some information that we'd like to start adding in for 2007. And we want to insert it up here at the top of our table. So to insert a row of information, I simply select the row where I would like the information to be added in, and I right-click and click Select Insert. And see how that pushes the information down? Now you'll notice that I've selected row 10, and that's put a gap between my information for the year 2005, which is really not what I want to do. So I've got two things I can do. I can go up to the top where my quick access toolbar is and say Undo Insert Cells, which removes it. Or if I re-add those, insert those cells again, I can delete the information by right-clicking on the row and selecting Delete. So it's very, very simple. And I find this the easiest way to work with inserting rows and columns is to look right in the spreadsheet itself. If you like the ribbon, you can do the same functions by using the ribbon commands. I select where I would like to insert my row. I go up to the Insert options, and I say Insert Sheet Rows. And it performs the same task. It's a little bit more work because I've got to move my mouse across the screen to get to where I want to go. But it's also nice that if I've made a mistake and I've added it into an incorrect area as I have here, I simply can move down one command, select Delete, delete the sheet rows, and the information is easily removed. I can similarly work with columns. Let's say I wanted to add a location in one of my columns in between the year and the channel. I go to the column header, in this case the column D header, and you'll see I have a downward pointing arrow here. If I click on that once, I'm going to select my whole column. That's a nice trick for you brand new Excel users, that if you hover right over the column letter that you're interested in selecting and just make sure you get that downward pointing arrow and click, you'll select the whole column. So I've selected D as the column, and I can right click and click Insert. I'm going to insert a column right at D, so I've pushed the information between year and channel out. I can remove that column by right-clicking again and selecting Delete. To review adding a column using the ribbon options, again, select the column where you'd like the information to be inserted by clicking on the downward pointing arrow. You'll notice it's shadowed and changed color, so you know you've selected it and that's where the information is going to be inserted, or the column is going to be inserted. Go up to the ribbon, select Insert, and now I have the Insert Sheet Columns option. I select that, and away I go. If I want to remove that, I simply select the Delete Ribbon command and select Delete Sheet Columns. Before we leave the option of inserting columns, I'm going to show you a little trick. In some cases, you're going to want to add more than one column at a time. Often, you're going to want to insert a column. Do that by using the ribbon menu and saying Insert Columns. But you're going to want to put in a few more columns. You can do that by hitting your F4 function key, and that just repeats the commands that you just finished performing. And you see I added at least 3 columns in at the same time. If I want to delete more than one column at a time, I simply select the column, click and drag my mouse across to highlight the area that I want to delete, and then select Delete Sheet Columns, and I can remove more than one at a time as well. I'm going to look at the same functionality, but now based on an actual cell. What happens if I wanted to insert a cell alone? If I select the retail cell in D4 and click Insert and click Insert Cells, you'll notice I get a little dialog box. I'm just going to move the dialog box up ever so slightly so that we can see what we're looking at here. It gives me 4 choices. It asks me, do I want to shift my cells to the right? So am I adding a column? Do I want to shift my cells down? Or would I like to perform this insert based on an entire row or an entire column? We already know what inserting a row and a column does. Let's see what happens when I want to insert just a cell and I decide I want to shift the cells down. So I select that and I say OK. Notice that it's inserted just an individual cell and it's kept all of the other information on the right and the left of the columns pinned to the worksheet. Why would I want to insert just an individual cell in this fashion? Perhaps I've been playing around with my data and my data is now skewed ever so slightly and I've moved it off and I just need to place a placeholder to add a piece of information in the middle of my table. That is a perfect example of why you'd want to just insert a particular cell, as I have done here. Obviously, in the example that I've shown you, it's thrown off my data, so I'm not going to leave it there, and I will show you how I can remove that cell in a moment. Keep that in mind when you are working with large tables of information and you need just to insert a cell in the middle of your lists. So as I mentioned, I don't want to leave it looking like this. How do I clean that up and remove that cell? Very simply, I select the cell I want to remove, I go to my Delete option, and I select Delete Cells. Now in this case, I want to shift my cells up because I want to move the information up one line. So I identify that by selecting the correct radio button, I click OK, and I'm back to normal. For those of you that would like to see how that's done using the mouse options, I simply select the cell, I right-click, I then present it with my quick menu, I select Insert. It asks me the same information that I was asked when I used the ribbon command. What do I want to do? In this case, I'm going to shift my cells right. I select that. I click OK, and you see how it's inserted a cell and pushed my information over to the right. To delete that function and that particular cell, I'm going to click on the cell I want to remove. I say Delete. I identify that I want to shift my cells left to bring them back to their original spot. I click OK, and everything's back to normal. So that's some individual ways that you can manage the cells on your screens. Next, we're going to take a look at freezing the areas of the worksheet so that I can pin my titles to my screens.